Okay, you should be able to see that. Welcome, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, April 5th, 7 p.m. We're here for the full commission meeting of the Greater Hilltop Area Commission. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And Mr. White, if you take our roll call today.
So just gonna go by here on the agenda today and David.
I'd like to get started.
Yeah.
Building community. That's where the building community. This is awesome. James, let's go ahead and take roll call.
Dan, David,
Here.
right here. Patrick, Leah,
Here.
Jenny,
Here.
Victoria,
Here.
Josh Paxton, here. Simon Dallas, here. Josh Maddox,
Here.
Malik, here.
Sean Maddox said he wouldn't be able to be here. He wasn't feeling well. Victoria's out of town. Okay, so on to the next item on the agenda. Patrick. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? I did neglect to add that we need to look at the budget as prepared by the Finance Committee. It needs to be approved for submission with our memorandum of understanding for the program year for the budget that we received from the City of Columbus beginning May 1st. So while during presentations later on, I'll go ahead and bring it up and review that. Approve it or have a discussion. Any other items? Sure.
If time permits, the Planning and Economic Committee would like to move to similar to the City of Columbus on behalf of Hilltop ICC.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We can put that under new business if there's time on the agenda. Thanks. Anything else? Okay, so moving on to the approval of minutes. Our secretary wasn't able to provide them in preparation for the meeting tonight, so I'm gonna have to table the approval of those. We'll get those out as soon as possible so that everybody can review those along with our minutes for this meeting well in advance of the next meeting. I did put out some guidelines to everybody in an email just about timelines for agendas for committee meetings, how often, how many days those should be. We should try to strive for that, you know, so many days before the meeting, taking minutes and notes in those meetings, those get back to the secretary and they all go back and post it on our webpage. So if anybody needs me to resend that email or any of those guidelines, let me know. But those are just, you know, guidelines. We do our best to try to get in those timelines and those rails. So any questions about that? Okay, so moving on to City of Columbus staff reports. Starting with the Division of Police, Sergeant Murphy said he wouldn't be able to join us tonight. He did say, and it was my fault, he said if we had a list of questions or anything we wanted to talk with him about, to send him an email and he would have put together a written response, but I didn't have the time to do that. So he didn't have anything specific to report, but did say that he was sorry I missed it. Here, City Attorney's Office, and Zach Winter, zone attorney's here today. Zach, do you have a report for us this evening?
Actually, Simon had a question about the arsons down in Frank. Not specific to catch two gentlemen who they now have associated with a number of the fires from the arson investigation. They were connected to at least 3 of them. There may be suspects in other arsons. Just let you know that ended up And then we filed a preliminary injunction, so we have that set for the 25th for property 460 South Ogden. And then there should be another coming for that date, house on the 2000 block. Other than that, everybody's good.
A number of tracking on the restaurant. I still just think one I did send it to request for 29 restaurants, 20
On the left,
on the left.
I think 4 flags for it.
Yeah, I think so. There's 5 of them all the way around and then really all out.
I think we have to just file.
Good. That closes. So I see some action.
Probably already have to do this. Yeah.
Zach, my question may be delayed, but with the liquor permits that the city recommended they not be renewed as of February, do you have any updates about whether or not those were heard and done with the state or anything like that? Do you have any updates about that?
I have not heard anything back on any of those. I have not seen a lot of applications out here on the hilltop for liquor permits. I know the dive bar, which was a big concern, that shut down on its own after a conversation with their attorney. And then there's another bar, south of Sullivan. As far as permits go,
So the 3 that were recommended to not be renewed as of February.
it was the marathon, and then Sunoco.
The Safeway Mini Mart, the marathons.
No final updates on any of those, but
No final updates.
I know they've been discussing the Safeway and the Sunoco. I don't know what the comments are.
Don't know if they've reached a state of hearing now with the liquor commission with the state. Anything about that? Okay.
Not that.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Although,
Thanks, appreciate it. All right, any other questions? Thank you, Zach. Is Avery Townsend? Hi, Avery, how are you? Avery's with City Council, Division of Community Engagement, Legislative Analyst, Avery Townsend.
Thank you.
That's a-
Thanks for that.
Big introduction.
Hi, everyone. Just to start with a quick state the date for the Westside Council community meeting. It's going to be at Glenwood on May 18th from 6 to 7:30. So that hasn't gone out yet. I just forgot to send out the Facebook. So 6 to 7:30, Glenwood, the Westside Council community. Well, the customers will be there. If you have any questions, asking questions, then that at a time, all the important staff, will be, both of their, assistant. Councilmember Nick Bankston is actually holding this virtual, and he said that community hours, not virtual, they just changed that today, I sent out, an edit to the email that I sent on Monday. He will be holding, just community hours until 1:30 p.m. at way down the days of coffee on that Tuesday, April 12th. So Tuesday. And then the Charter Review Commission is still meeting. You can get their schedule fully posted. It can change, but it pretty much stays where it's at along with that law, Charter Review 2022. And the Citizens Commission on the official compensation is actually wrapping up with the fine for. So they're meeting tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. is their last meeting before their adoption of their recommendation. So I feel like one more. Oh, I think the last time I was here was the day before council members were in. So I sent that out to the way that the zoning committee procedure will change, not zoning, not the, CPF, nothing changes right now with the actual apartment zoning process, but the way that the chair will be done, so it's a little bit different. I understand the office sent out a letter to the I'm sure you guys have any questions about that. You don't hesitate to email me. I will. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Is the Department of Neighborhoods or Westside Flight Center manager?
Just a quick reminder about some upcoming trainings that we have tomorrow. If you didn't have a chance to register for this, we have a guide. We have our rules for constructive conversations about race and justice training coming up. Later in April, code enforcement, and then on deck in May, parliamentary procedures, and towards the end of May, state attorney's office training. Not that are fearless leader organizations.
Thank you. So on to the report of officers is listed on the agenda. Sean asked me to do the treasurer report this evening. It really isn't any different because we haven't had any expenditures in the month of March. So this is just a review. Our balance on hand is $2,113.68. And so we have, just as a reminder, to the end of April to spend the balance of this money or the city to just recoup it. So I did make a small purchase on behalf of the commission for name tags that they're in my trunk. So I'll make sure everybody gets that this evening from Great Research Trophy Company. And then we have a longer list of agenda or purchase items that we'll be doing in April. It's like renewing our restream Zoom license, those kinds of constant contact, some new things that we're doing to help with communication. So any questions about the treasurer's report? Great, so we are ahead of schedule. We're going to start with our reports of committees. We're going to start with the zoning committee. Patrick Markle.
We had just a few agenda items. Oh, sure, yes. Last week. So the application for so the only two that we actually ended up reviewing was Alki Road, which we're going to get to in a moment. The applicant for Eureka did not show. So our agenda for the upcoming Tuesday, April 19th, 5:30 meeting will be CV 21-014, 363 North Eureka Avenue, followed by CV 22-019, 25 North Main Avenue. Third, CV 22-025, 400 Ryan Avenue. And we've also been requested from the applicant of CV 21-117, 24, 56 West Broad Street that we take a look at their application again. Normally, if there's no changes, that would just be denied. In this instance, there is actually a contracted buyer to purchase that property who would like to live in it as a single family purchaser. So we're going to hear that buyer out. If there's no changes, I don't know that we may just not recommend that it be heard at the full area commission meeting, but we will hear it at its own and make a recommendation when hear it again at the full area commission meeting. Finally, I do want to make sure that I mention this as well. So what you may not have known, I think from the zoning committee meeting, the development commission and a 3-3 vote decided to vote against the North Wilson Road Sheets location. So the area commission, the zoning committee meeting, we wrote a letter of support of the applicant for 782 Wilson Road. A copy of that letter, which is approved by the zoning committee, I've attached to here because there was not enough. We did not expect there to be enough time for these chair Fay also approved. So by his authority, we already sent that to the city. That's right. They actually had a deadline. We had to do that at the deadline. A copy of that letter is available here for anyone to review by
So the one application that we did here, 3855 Alkire Road, CV 22-009. You may be familiar with this application. This is the apartment complex that we had already approved last year. You'll see that has a new zoning application number, and that's because there's a change in the zoning. So the original plan was to combine two parcels. With the combined parcels, the rules that we set under on the screening and buffering between the adjacent developments remain. What they're actually asking for is a variance from, now they're asking for a variance on the side yard requirement and setback. What's going to be happening now is that it is going to be two different parcels, and the building is being built right on the parcel line. So the two parcels will actually go through the middle of the apartment complex. The applicant, some of the application is here today.
It may not be helpful. Yeah. Interested. Thank you. My name is Jill and I'm an attorney with Boris Gators B1P, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And yes, thank you, Patrick. This is the exact same zoning that we had before. As we were getting ready to finalize that zoning and the site plan that you approved, which has not changed at all. The city identified a very technical variance issue. Normally, when you build for a project like this, you would combine all the parcels into one parcel. And so the buildings, you would have one parcel that would be identified as the sub area 2 that was on the site plan that you approved. The city determined that you cannot combine the parcels, the legal parcels. As shown on the handout, there's a blue line that goes right through the middle of the building. And on the left side of that, all of the parcels start with a 432 number, I believe. And the parcel on the right side starts with 010, which means they're in two different taxing districts. They're all still in the city of Columbus, but the county auditor will not allow us to combine those because they have two different prefixes. The reason that that happened is that part of this site was annexed to Columbus under one law, and then in 2000 that law changed, and the remaining parcels were annexed after 2000. So they're in two different taxing districts because of that annexation. So because we can't combine the parcels, we have to put the building and the site plan over the parcel line. So the city asked us to add a variance to our zoning application, basically stating that we can't combine the parcels, and therefore we've got to build the building right on top of the property, the parcel. Again, nothing has changed in the site plan. Everything we told you we were going to do in terms of commitments and this site plan are all exactly the same. It's just because we cannot legally combine the two parcels that we now need to add this variance. So that's really the crux of it. I'm happy to answer questions. You might start to see these variances coming through a little more frequently. We didn't used to do variances for these. It used to be sort of an internal process in Columbus that was kind of handled through the building department. And this is sort of a recent change, I think, in attitude about how we're going to handle these. So we may see a lot more of these. It's actually a really common situation. But again, I think there's going to change in policy on how we're handling those. So we may see more of these come down the pipe over the next couple of years.
My understanding from the discussion of zoning is that the reason they cannot be combined is that the one parcel is in Southwest City Schools and the other is in Columbus City.
They're actually, I believe, all in the same school district. They're in two different townships. This is a bizarre situation, but The law before 2000, when you annexed property to the city of Columbus removed it from the township and put it into, they call it a paper township. But it was completely Columbus controlled. After 2000, you couldn't do that anymore. And so the properties are actually in two different townships. One is in this paper township, and then the other is in the existing township. And so, but I'm pretty sure that they're all Columbus schools. So I don't know if the school districts have changed. But I could be wrong about that, but I'm fairly certain.
Any questions on the application?
I do have a question. I was at the zoning committee, heard the presentation, but didn't ask. Did you meet with the homeowners and the representatives that were involved in the zoning application before?
We didn't, again, this is such a technical thing, we did not. We're happy to reach out to them. I've tried to keep Beth apprised of where we are in the process, but we didn't discuss this. Again, we're not changing anything. This is truly
Understood. So did you email her about this technicality? Or did you?
I didn't talk to her about this. No.
Great.
And commissioner questions? Questions from the general public?
So.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I don't know.
So none, I'm gonna move through the application, CV 2209. Oh, by the way, the vote, the Ed committee was unanimously in favor. So. Shoot, we don't have a secretary. All right. Do you want to call the roll?
Fagan,
Yes.
also yes. Barnacle,
Yes.
Bruno,
Yes.
Kevlar,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Paxton, Dallas,
Yes.
Maddox,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
motion is approved.
That concludes for zoning. Our next meeting is April 19th, 5:30 p.m. Hilltop Library.
Okay, the work of our community relations committee, could we have a report? Co-chairs Jenny Kepler and Josh Burns.
So we met on Tuesday, March 22nd, via Zoom for community relations. We met very briefly, talked about, we're hosting library table hours, so that we can kind of start to better get the word out about the commission. So far, slated, we are appearing at Hilltop Library April 16th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We also have a date in December, which we'll announce later. If anybody wants to volunteer to man the table even for an hour, that would be wonderful. Kind of some public outreach. Malik is my new best friend, so he's volunteered. We also talked about, there's a discussion about consistency standards, roles and responsibilities within the committee, just trying to make sure that we are timely about making our documents public before the meetings. If a person normally does and isn't available, who takes that over, that sort of thing. As also just mentioned in government legislation, we have a current document in progress about the covers the best practices that we're hoping to include in commissioner packets at some point, and this may go in conjunction with that. We discussed participating in the meeting dinner this year since it's coming back. Actually getting a table meeting dinner for the commission. Again, more public visibility and a chance to reach out to the public. And there was also discussion about the Hilltop USA sign and needing to be cleaned up. And we received word this week from our Melissa Green that that was taken care of. So that took, I think, a couple of things off my to-do list, which I was very grateful for. Our next meeting is on April 26th at 7 p.m. at the Design Refinery. As for government and legislation, we met on March 14th at 7 o'clock at the Design Refinery, and it was a pretty brief meeting. It was mostly a clarifying meeting, discussing our potential partnership with the League of Women Voters in doing voter drives and candidate forums. At that point, Leah and I had a Zoom call scheduled. We since had that Zoom call with the League of Voters.
Yeah, so I reached out to the league, staff. We have been interested for a while now in conducting some neighborhood voter outreach. We have historically we've had some of the lowest voter turnout, especially now that we're going to have our council district increasing efforts to change that. So the league is very interested in partnering with us. They are, of course, a nonpartisan organization like ourselves to both supply us with volunteers, with supplies, but also trainings and anyone who's participating in some of those drives. They will help facilitate and make sure that we're on the right track, door outreach, safely, event outreach. So that's going to be an excellent partnership. We're going to not focus on primary, we don't exactly know what's happening yet to district date. But we're hoping to start ramping up efforts into the summer when events get back. At Summertime West, be there, as well as some local outreach combined with some missions, general mission. So stay tuned for the local volunteer opportunities this summer.
Yes. So we also talked about creating new member packets to onboard new commissioners that would potentially include these best practices that are in the works. I decided that I had started these last year, writing it by myself, but I really need to solicit help from others on the commission to make it more equitable and to cover areas that are really so. So those are going to be going out to everyone on the commission to review and to see where we go from there. We discussed the need to go through the fishing bylaws to make corrections and updates so that there's a new fresh copy with all of the bylaws in them. And there's also discussion about having a consistent weekly presence at City Council, potentially a rotation of members of the commission so as to get everybody involved in that. Seeing as how we actually have a designated Greater Hilltop chair at City Council, we should probably do that. Our next meeting date is Monday, April 11th, 7 p.m. at the Design Refinery.
Thank you very much. It's been a lot of work. So is that schedule prepared to go out, or is it working on the schedule of?
No, we need to.
You can bring it on there. Okay. That's what I was thinking this one. Okay. Okay. Are Human Services and Education Committee Chair James Wade?
I don't necessarily have an update on our action items, but we will be meeting again this month, April 20th at 5:30 p.m. at the library. We're just going to follow up on some issues that we're trying to tackle, such as homelessness and Hilltop. I'm still waiting on updates from the city of Columbus Public Schools about the facility master plan. That legislation or information should be coming out soon, in the next couple of months. So stay tuned on that. That's all I have.
Okay, moving on to our liquor permit review committee, our chair Rachel Wynn is not here this evening, so we'll move on to planning and economic development committee. Co-chairs are Simon Dallas and Victoria Klein.
All right, so the last meeting we had a discussion about supporting the Hilltop Rise company concerning move to submit a report that we want distributors pass that out for the rest of the commission, as well as information about the community development corporation. So since it is not on the agenda, as
The clip, we're going to have time to do business.
well, I will expedite my comments on that. That way we can review it during the meeting and just get this going.
So that's your report.
That is my report.
Our next meeting, I think, is April 14th at the library at 5:30.
Onto our public safety committee, the chair, Blay, is actually out of the country. She's traveling, so wasn't able to make it tonight. Just one comment about our public safety committee. We're moving the meetings to Saturdays. If somebody can help me out, I think it's the third Saturday in April. We'll announce that. Fourth Saturday. It's at 10 a.m. So that's where we're going to move the public safety committee meeting. It used to be on Thursdays, going to move to the fourth Saturday of the month at the Hilltop Library at 10 a.m. It kind of has a large number of items that you'd like to kind of begin to work on. And one of the things that we have talked about is possibly whether or not we could maybe hold an event maybe later on this year, or bring city officials, maybe other elected representatives, just to a discussion, just a conversation, just about, so we've been talking to different folks about trying to get that potential plan in the beginning stages, but I think it's a real opportunity for a couple of our committees to get together to talk about how to strategize around that event, plan for that event, and then make it a good worthwhile for an event for everybody. So just giving a kind of a preemptive announcement about that. I'm going to encourage her to reach out to the committee chairs, specifically community relations, human services, and education, other committees to be able to just meet collaboratively around the
So the fourth Saturday, that'd be the 23rd. But I only ask because I think that might be Lisa Boggs' cleanup day, which might be a hard day.
I don't think actually she said she could not be for Saturday for April.
Okay.
So I don't know if she said a day.
Okay. Well, more to come. We will update our calendar on our webpage for anybody that's listening in on social media streaming sort of platforms or whatever. At our website, we keep our calendar up to date, day to day. Josh does a remarkable job of that. So, make sure that include the minutes when the next meeting is going to be. Make sure we get those. Thank you. Our Recreation and Parks Committee, Chair Josh Paxton.
Yeah, so we had a fairly short meeting, just mainly to discuss which parks we visit this year on which dates. So the first park that we're going to visit is Stephen Drive on the 21st of May. But we will be meeting on April 16th at the library at 9. And then we also discussed having a makeup day for visiting parks, which would be 10:15, and whether or not I guess if we have heavy rain or lightning, we will reschedule. But if it's just a light rain or if it's just cloudy, we'll still get out there. We'll make sure that that's which parts we're going to, on which dates. So.
Any questions for Josh? Right, so this is the website, cbusareacommissions.org. You can find all the commissions across Columbus. They all have a webpage here, but this is if you've never seen this before. This, if you scroll down, these are calendars. So for April, these are, even as we're announcing them, Josh is updating them. But this is where you can see our calendar of events. Also a description of all the committees that we just gave reports on. Want to encourage commission or committee chairs to take a look at this. There's some descriptions that we need to add about what's the purpose, the charter, kind of the focus of this, the work of this committee. Josh is keeping membership and different things updated here, but this is a chance to put our meeting minutes from the committee meetings, et cetera. But going back to really want to encourage everybody to get our descriptions of our committee and the work they're doing about those. Send those to Josh. Okay, that concludes our report on all of our committees. So we are 20 minutes ahead of schedule. So, and Erin Beck is here to do a presentation. She's waited many months to come in and speak to us. We have pushed her from meeting to meeting to meeting. So, Erin, I'm going to do the best job I can to tee you up. I think I've got some presentation materials here. Give me just a moment. How are we doing? Does this look great?
Yes. Yeah. And I have 4 copies of the full plan. We did kind of a limited print run, so if people want to look through or pass those around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can people hear me okay? I know I'm not.
Yeah, there's a
loud.
microphone.
Okay, yeah, I might use that. I'm gonna stand over here so I can see everybody. Hi, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you again. My name is Erin Beck. I'm the Assistant Sustainability Officer with the City of Columbus and with our Sustainable Columbus team. Great to be back here with the Greater Hilltop Area Commission. This is my home neighborhood area commission, so great to be with all of my neighbors tonight. And thank you, Chair Fagan, for the invite tonight. Yeah, I know we've kind of, I think been working on this for a couple months, but it really worked out because it's Earth Month, so I feel like it's really fitting that we're here talking about the climate action plan, and you're going to hear about Link Us and I think our EV readiness work that's happening as well. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to go, this is kind of an adventure. I don't think I've done in person in 2 years. So, so a Columbus climate action plan, why do we need one and why is this a priority for Columbus? We know that climate change is happening as we speak. With the latest IPCC report, that's the International Panel on Climate Change, they're saying that it is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. So we know this is something that's having an impact on our community right here in Columbus, and it's going to continue to have impacts for the coming decades. And most critically, we know that it really is our BIPOC and low-income communities who are disproportionately impacted and who are most at risk and vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So as our Columbus community is going to see increased heat, more frequent 90+ degree days, and worsening storms and rainfalls, these are the communities that are really going to be most negatively impacted. And so that's really why climate and sustainability is critical to our equity agenda here in the city. And that's why we know we need to lead with ambition and that's guided by science and rooted and centered in equity as we look to be carbon neutral by 2050. Go to the next slide. That really leads me into just what is our mission in the climate action plan. So our North Star is to be carbon neutral by 2050. But we also know that we need to significantly reduce emissions by 2030. So our goal, which we're really looking at as the floor for our community, and where we need to be, is to reduce emissions by 45% by 2030. This really keeps us in line with the latest climate science, and it ensures that Columbus is doing its part to combat global climate change. And something I should point out as well, this is a community-wide plan, so these goals are not just for the city of Columbus and our municipal operations, it's really for our entire Columbus community. So when it comes to emissions in the plan, we're utilizing a 2013 baseline. That is the earliest that our community began to track community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. And that's just a best practice that cities use the earliest year they started tracking. But what I really want to point out here in this slide and in this pie graph is that in Columbus, a majority of our emissions are coming from two places. And that's from transportation and from buildings energy use. So the single largest sector for emissions is transportation, but if you look at commercial, residential, and industrial energy combined, that actually accounts for just under 60% of emissions in our community. So when it comes to just what is in the plan itself, there are 5 different sections in the plan which really reflect the sectors of our community that are critical to emissions reductions, but they also reflect our community values. So you can see that up there in the slide, that's what those 5 different colored boxes are. And then we have 13 different strategies within those sections. And we have 32 specific actions, each with its own targets and goals that are time bound to really help us measure our progress and keep ourselves accountable. Next slide, I'm not going to cover everything that's there. Content in the plan, but did want to highlight, at least on the right here, kind of an example of what you see in the climate action plan. So this is an example from the building section. The strategy here is to increase renewable energy, and then the specific action is that we want to increase residential on-site solar. You'll kind of see where it says targets, we have really specific targets that we're looking to implement by a certain time to, again, like I said, help keep us accountable, help keep us on track. And then I also wanted to highlight the plan, if you go to the left side of the screen, it really reflects both mitigation and adaptation strategies. So what you'll see are actions and goals in the plan are intended to ensure our community is prepared for the impacts of climate change and is building resiliency. That's what climate adaptation means. So mitigation means that we're really trying to stave off the impacts of climate change, and then adaptation is just making sure that we're ready for some of those inevitable impacts. And that's where you'll see things like building a network of resiliency hubs, developing a resilient buildings design checklist, or implementing a regional climate emergency alert system. Those are all kind of some examples of that in the plan. And so we launched this plan early in December of last year, and we were proud to have partners with us from the environmental community, the nonprofit sector, and private sector. We have the Ohio Environmental Council, Impact Community Action, and One Columbus and the Columbus Partnership with us. And then on this slide, we did put out a social media toolkit, but this link, I know that I sent this PDF to Chair Fagan, so it can kind of be sent out to anybody. That link also just takes you to our website where you can find the full climate action plan, the executive summary, all of that is available for download online. The next one. So when it comes to implementation and accountability, the city is actively hiring a climate action plan implementation manager. Actually, I think she has pretty much been hired. We're kind of in the process of getting her onboarded sometime in May, I think. So really excited to be hiring a full-time staff person who's really going to be overseeing implementation of the climate action plan. And then we have established 5 work groups those different sections of the plan were really going to help us stay aligned and help move the work forward. Those groups are made up of city departments as well as external partners and organizations, and are kind of open to anyone who is really interested in the work. We do ask for folks to have regular attendance and maybe bring some kind of insight either into the policy or some kind of leadership decision-making expertise, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a technical expert. It could mean, that you're a resident with lived experience and you just know that this is something this policy area is really important to your community. And then also really important to know is that the CAP is a living document. So we are planning to do updates every 5 years and then major revisions every 10 years. So 2030 and 2040. And a lot of that is just to make sure we're staying in line with the latest climate science and that the plan is really staying pertinent and relevant to the community as our community is changing and growing. And then just some other highlights that I wanted to share. I mentioned our climate action plan implementation manager, but that is one of 6 positions that we're actually adding to our Sustainable Columbus team this year. So I think this just really speaks to how serious the city is about our climate action plan and our sustainability work. You can see up there kind of the positions that we are going to be bringing on in the next month. So really excited to be expanding our team. We are making some big investments in equitable workforce development and residential energy efficiency. Kind of giving you a preview of something we're actually announcing on Thursday at a press conference with the mayor, but really making a big investment with impact community action to start a workforce training program geared toward young people in our opportunity neighborhoods. So just like in the Hilltop, to get them really plugged in to these jobs of tomorrow and the clean energy sector and in climate related fields. And then I also have up there our 2022 Solarize Campaign. So this is a partnership we're entering into with Solar United Neighbors, which is a nonprofit that helps do on-site solar education for residents. And it's basically going to be a co-op that's going to be running this fall that will be open to anyone in the city of Columbus who's interested in possibly going solar. It's a great way to learn about residential on-site solar. And then the group kind of as a co-op goes out to do an RFP to get an installer and kind of gets that benefit of a group discount. But more to come on that. So that'll be coming this fall. I think that was all. So that was a lot. I don't know if we want to do questions now or.
Yeah, we've got oh,
yeah.
Any comments, questions for Aaron?
Kind of have a combo. Aaron,
Sure, yeah.
I want you to hear how grateful I am for this, right? The equity piece, it's very forward thinking. But where I have a little bit of a struggle is right now we struggle just with like a base level need. And do we see opportunity to maybe kill 2 birds with 1 stone? As I look at what are they? The environmental justice advocates. One of the big problems we have here is trash. And I want to thank Melissa for our second recycle can. That's been a huge thing. But little efforts like that, I think we have some infrastructure in place that we could really leverage these things, but I don't know how connected the 2 thoughts are.
Yeah. Well, I totally hear you on the trash. I definitely get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think that's something we're really striving for, is to make sure that everything we're doing is really benefiting residents in neighborhoods like the Hilltop and like Linden, and making sure that it's relevant to their everyday lives and to their lived experiences, and not so disconnected as sometimes. I think sometimes sustainability might feel like, what does that have to do with me? And I think that's kind of where we're trying to tell that message and get more on the ground input from residents about what they really need. And I think that's exactly what the environmental justice advocate position is meant to do. We really want them to be like the gut check of, hey, this isn't really jiving with what the community is wanting, or you're not really thinking about this right. Like, we kind of want them actively interjecting and questioning, how we're moving forward. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, and we definitely are really plugged in with public service. We do have a waste working group. That's one of the sections in the plan, just to speak, I guess, to the trash issue, because we definitely want to see more people. We definitely don't want people littering. We want people to increase recycling rates, and we know we need to divert organic waste as well. So, and Ari Alex leads our waste working group. People, so, and I know you all have a great program. I was really excited about the Sustainability Ambassadors program. I know a couple of folks here had a big hand in, but that's I think the kind of effort that we want to see is really hiring people from the community to go out and help us with the work, and be actively getting that input. So.
Hey, Leah, thanks for being here. I would say basically the same thing to you that I said that all of our that I think what a lot of us want to see is having organizations like yourself as part of the city, but as a community initiative, leveraging some of your power to help us with some of the asks that we've been asking for a long time, but still playing into your progress. So like increased walkability, is very much part of this. Bus stops that are reliable, increased transit, things that are already in place in our city, it could just get, ramped up. We've been asking for years that play into your plan, so rather than, reinventing the wheel 1,000 times, that we've all seen and we've not seen for a long time. Just figuring out where we can coordinate and where we can just cross efforts. So that's all I can say. Something that all of us are thinking whenever we do a presentation.
I appreciate that feedback and input. I know that's kind of a big piece of our sustainable Columbus work and effort is to really make sure we're working with all of our city departments and trying to really ingrain in everyone that this, this isn't just an initiative for the sustainable Columbus team. It's going to take everybody throughout the city working on this and making these commitments and keeping it into their work. So.
Some members of the community ask about the residential on-site solar.
Yeah.
And I'm not familiar with it at all, but could you talk about what that looks like specifically?
Yeah, so we do have, I'll speak to, I guess, our 2030 target is to have 50 megawatts of on-site solar, residential on-site solar installed, which is a really ambitious goal. I can't recall at the top of my head exactly where we are now in terms of, and I know a lot of people don't really megawatts, that may not mean a whole lot to people, but it's kind of it is an ambitious goal, but that's kind of where one of the efforts, that Solarize campaign, that's one effort and kind of strategy that we'll have. I'm not saying we have all the answers today for exactly how we're going to get there, but I will say at least over the last 3 years when we kind of pulled permits, the numbers were doubling almost every year. So a lot of residents are interested in going solar. But right now what we're working on is that Solarize campaign. I would see us doing more of those in the future. We definitely know that having more incentives to go solar is going to be, that's kind of one of the big challenges or things we need to figure out, because it is kind of a big upfront cost to be able to do that. And a lot of times it requires a roof to also be in good enough shape to have that on-site solar as well. And then another thing we're working on is with our building and zoning department to have Soul Smart designation, which basically means that we have best practices when it comes to permitting. So making sure that that process is as easy as possible for residents, and that we're not throwing unnecessary hurdles. And we also know we need to work with our historic districts as well on what that might look like for them. So.
Question for the community. Will Columbus be subsidizing any switch that homeowners are making to solar?
So I think that's still an area that we're trying to figure out. I hope that is answering the question. I don't have the specific answer on it right now. But like I said, we definitely know that there need to be, I think, more financial options for residents who want to go solar, and definitely more help for those, because it is a challenge. Like I said, there is kind of a big upfront cost if you're willing to go solar. So we are looking at financial opportunities that can help with that.
Are there any new efforts or like
requirements for new construction to have, you know, a certain amount of their own land to come from, you know, actually solar, you know, or even on the city owned buildings, so our school district buildings or the healthcare buildings going in, it's all happening there. Yeah, so in the plan, we have goals for residential on-site solar, but then we also have goals for commercial and for municipal. So the city, we do have some solar, on-site solar projects that we're working on at the utilities department, but then we've also identified some buildings with other departments that might be appropriate to have rooftop solar on. And then one of the other actions in the plan as well is around establishing a regional green fund that could really help incentivize building owners to go solar and to make those projects a reality. We also have goals in the plan around building energy efficiency, as well as goals, at least for city buildings, to do 4 pilot net zero buildings and then to have net zero building design standards as well.
It worked into the tax agent system. Which we're going to be giving tax agents to our companies the same way that we theoretically require affordable housing, also require solar driveways.
Yeah, so we are having conversations with the development department about what could be done in that space. I think we do know that other cities sometimes require those buildings to be at least like a LEED standard of some kind. So that's kind of the conversation we're having right now, is like, are there some options that we can give those building owners who are receiving an incentive that, hey, you have to at least do a couple of these things that help us meet our climate and sustainability goals. So yeah, still very early beginning conversations on that one, but it's, yeah, we've had that raised before and are having conversations about it.
I would link us also in planning on our transit corridors, and we're also looking at sustainability of the transit corridors in cooperation with that project as well.
Yes, Link Us is going to be huge when it comes to the climate action plan. Especially one of our strategies is to support equitable mode shift, and we actually ended up adding an action to the plan that is in line with Link Us around the bus rapid transit corridors. So it's great that I think you're going to get an update on that project right after this. But that really is going to be a critical initiative to helping us meet our climate action plan goals. And I know our team is part of their administrative committee. I know they had folks from the Sierra Club that were, now there's the steering committee, I think. There's 3 different committees that are kind of overseeing the initiative. But that is definitely, yeah, those are conversations we're having with the Link Us leadership. So.
Thank you for your presentation, Erin. The chairs of our Planning and Economic Development Committee, Victoria and Simon, just like we to stay in touch with them, and vice versa, boards just throughout the rest of this year, just opportunities to give updates and for us to continue to give them the presentation.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I skipped over somebody earlier on in the presentation. I think it's still here from Envision Top. I skipped over you, sir. I apologize. Yeah. You may have your name.
But I think I pulled it off.
You want the mic?
I can speak up if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so McLeod, Envision Hilltop, I think I introduced myself to the back to January when I started with the city of Columbus. I'll be very brief in our updates, but we continue to convene the Envision Hilltop Advisory Committee. We have 4 members on this commission that are part of that committee, and we continue to move forward with subcommittee meetings as well. So we have 3 subcommittees made up on that advisory committee. People placed home, which are the top plan. I think at the last meeting, Dana did plug and encourage folks on this commission. If you're interested in getting involved with one of the subcommittees, please reach out to myself or Dana. I'll leave my business cards maybe over on this table here so you have my contact information. if you're interested in engaging with one of the subcommittees and participating, please reach out to me and we'll get you connected. So you participate with. So we'll go ahead and put that again. The next subcommittee meetings, I believe the people subcommittees meetings on April 8th, and the home subcommittees meeting on April 2nd, and the place subcommittee is also, sorry, the 20th.
Yeah.
And actually it's the home subcommittee. So you can talk to her directly if that's what you're interested in. Yeah. Here, so please connect with them if you're very interested in participating on their subcommittee work. Reach out to me. Any questions for myself?
No, thanks for the information. Appreciate it.
Okay, back to presentations. Then. We do have Linkus Mobility Initiative, and the Linkus team is here tonight. Yeah.
Should we all?
Here's a USB radio send you work on.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Great. So my name is Zach Steinman. I work with CODA, project manager for the East-West Corridors project, specifically West Broad Street corridor, part of the Linkus initiative. So thanks for having me out here. I know I've presented to the area commission before. I think it was virtual, so this is my first time being here in person. So it's great to be in person. So we have some good attendance tonight. But first, I'm going to walk through some slides just to provide an overview of the Linkus initiative. So Aaron, thanks for this is a great connection and segue into the Linkus initiative here. So you can go next slide. So some of these, so for those of you who have participated in some of our engagements so far through last year and the year before, this may be repeated information, but I'd like to start off each of the meetings with just an update about the Linkus initiative because it is very new, and talk about how it came about. So back in 2014, North Sea Mid Ohio Regional Planning Commission looked at our region to see that 1 million more people were going to be moving to Central Ohio. So we're around 2 million people around 2010, so 3 million people by 2050, so just 4 decades. And I know we're well on our way within the last 10 years of meeting that projection. And then in 2017, CODA looked at our existing fixed route network and the services that we offer, and really wanted to look at what new elements we could add by the year 2050. So we went through a visioning exercise called the Next Gen Vision Plan, which looked at new fixed route lines, line extensions, frequency improvements, new services like on-demand, technology improvements, and most importantly to the Linkus initiative, we looked at several corridors within our region that were warranted for high capacity rapid transit, and one of those corridors being West Broad Street. There were around 14 corridors. It started with 26, narrowed down to 14. Each one of those corridors were looked at in terms of modes, so bus rapid transit, light rail, streetcar, and commuter rail. And the majority of those corridors were identified as most feasible for bus rapid transit. And then in 2018, MORPC took the information with the growth from the Insight 2050 plan and really wanted to look at where these 1 million more people would move into their region. Would they move, we grow further and further out like we have the last several decades, or refocus that growth along key corridors and syncing that up with the transit investments. So then in 2020, the Linkus Initiative formed, which is really just a partnership between the City of Columbus, CODA, MORPC, Franklin County, and all of our municipal partners within our region. Next slide. So there are 3 corridors currently, I don't want to say it's under study, but really into action right now. And one of those corridors is the Northwest Corridor, which is another corridor project. I can direct you to the website, linkUsColumbus.com, for more information on that corridor. And then we have the West Broad Street corridor and the East Main Street corridor, which originally started as the East-West Corridors project back in 2019. Ultimately was one 20-mile stretch from the west, where we have a Westwoods Boulevard park and ride out near Prairie Township, all the way east to the county line, Licking County and Franklin County. That first phase resulted in 3 separate locally preferred alternatives. So West Broad Street, East Broad Street, and East Main Street, with immediately moving forward into design with West Broad Street and East Main Street. If you go to the next slide. So looking specifically at West Broad Street and East Main Street, in our first phase, we looked at segmenting this 20-mile stretch, because we know that throughout this 20-mile stretch, it's very diverse in terms of the right-of-way constraints, development patterns, the land use, and population density along the way. So we looked at the corridor into different segments, specifically the West Broad Street corridor, broken up into 4 segments. So segment 1 being Prairie Township and Franklin Township, west of 270. Segment 2 generally being the greater Hilltop area. Segment 3 being Franklinton, and then segment 4 being downtown, which would connect with both the Northwest Corridor and East Main Street corridor. And when we looked at each one of these segments, we wanted to look at what made the most sense for the terms of the guideway options. So majority of the guideway for the bus rapid transit in the first phase is designated as center median dedicated, and then the segment 1 is identified as mixed traffic, which I'll get into in a future slide. So this slide really represents what we're trying to do with LinkUs initiative, in the sense that this investment is not something that CODA has undergone before, and this is really nothing that we have in Central Ohio today. So we're really looking to build above and beyond what we have currently. So right now, specifically on Broad Street, we have our line 10, generally operating 10 to 15 minutes. A bus comes every 10 or 15 minutes. It's one of our higher ridership routes. But again, going back to that next gen plan, that corridor was identified as needing more robust transit. So some of the elements on these graphics include what we're looking at as part of these corridor projects. So for bus rapid transit, looking at those electric buses instead of our CNG, clean natural gas, and diesel, as we're phasing out right now. Looking at larger vehicles. So right now, our largest vehicle in our fleet is 40 feet. Looking at having 60-foot vehicles with the articulation in the middle, the bending part you can see in other cities, and just increasing that capacity. Some other elements. One of the biggest elements of bus rapid transit is that dedicated right-of-way, which really increases that reliability of people using transit service, and it can also decrease those travel times using it. So as you know, today, when the buses are traveling with all the other traffic, any traffic or construction results in a delay in travel times for those using transit. While someone using a car can get around other ways and try and find the quickest way using Google Maps or Waze or what have you. So really having that dedicated lane is the first step in securing premier transit like service. Some other elements of it is having more stations instead of just having bus stops. So the frequency, really facilitating boardings at key nodes where we have our high ridership opportunities, as opposed to currently the line 10 stopping every other block, generally every 500 feet to have those boardings and the linings, and really creating those stations to create a sense of place and wayfinding similar to something that you would see like on a light rail station. Let me go to the next slide. So back in 2021, last year, I already mentioned this, we wrapped up our first phase in the summer, resulting in 3 locally preferred alternatives, one being West Broad Street. And then we requested entry into the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grant Program, which we could receive up to 50% funding through the federal government. So that's a huge win. So currently we are in project development for West Broad Street, moving towards 15% design. Next slide. So looking at the station locations that were identified in the first phase, we looked at existing ridership, land use, and
current densities to generate the station locations that made the most sense. So counting here, there's about 6 different stations located in the greater Hilltop area. Most of these near existing high ridership stops, and generally spaced about half a mile to a mile apart. So again, increasing those or decreasing those travel times for those using transit while facilitating all those boardings to happen at one location instead of stopping very frequently as it does today. And on the next slide, I think I'd zoom in a little bit. So just to get a sense, this is just a representation. I think that middle part represents the greater Hilltop area. And then the white dots represent our current stops today. So again, sometimes when you're riding the line 10 from all the way out west to downtown, you can stop at every single stop. There's a wheelchair boarding or a bike boarding that can take even longer. So really decreasing those boarding times is a key part of bus rapid transit. And then on the next slide, this just represents some of the work we've completed in the first phase of really looking at a high level of what the street looked like with reallocating space to transit. So this is specifically, I think, an example of Broad and Central, so just east of Hilltop and Franklinton, of looking at that middle lane being reallocated to transit, and then try to site a station in the middle of the roadway as opposed to vehicles traveling on the curbside, having the stops occur on the side. So right now we're in that 15% design phase, really working through what this looks like within our streets. And these are just some of the tasks that we're going through. So right now we're 50% design, tracking towards a 30% design by the end of the year. And meetings like this are really important for us to get out in the community. So this is number 2, stakeholder and public engagement. And I do want to emphasize, I am providing some information today, but there's a plethora of information on our website that you can get caught to speed, and videos if you have time to watch them from previous meetings. So looking ahead, we've done a lot so far, but really I do want to emphasize that there's a lot of milestones ahead of us working through the FTA's grant program. There's a lot of requirements that we have to go through, including environmental work ahead of us. So where we are early 2022, again, tracking towards that 30% design by the end of the year. Hopefully get to construction by 2024 and begin service by 2027. And then again, I'll direct you to our website. It has a plethora of information. Follow us on social media, and I do want to say that as we're ramping up 50% design, there's going to be a lot of engagement opportunities ramping up. In particular, I think there's events we have raised in the back of the room.
Yeah, I'll just kind of say that out. So on April 23rd, we'll be doing a cleanup event along West Broad, and we'll be meeting at the third day half day. And you can get more information and register as a volunteer to participate with the project team, kind of talk with us about the project as well as help us clean up West Broad. It should be really fun. We'll have some activities and things to do alongside of cleaning up and doing that activity part of Earth Day. And it is tiny URL, TINY.com/link-us-Earth Day. And that's how you can register to volunteer and join us and have some fun and do something great for your community.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. I know there sounds like there's already some events happening on that day, but stay tuned. I think in late May and early June, we'll have some more formal opportunities for public engagement. And I will say, if there's groups here that you have that would love a presentation, we're all ears and willing to make it out in the next couple of months. It's great now that we can be in person, so it provides another channel that we can tackle. So, I can take any questions if there are.
I've asked about the grade lines on slide 4. Oh, one more back. Oh, sorry. Those additional blue lines on the east side. Are those all kind of like set in stone right now? Obviously, some of those are still being.
Yeah, so the green ones are really the ones that we're in action right now. The grayer ones represent other potential corridors that could be under study or under action implementation in the near future. As Aaron mentioned earlier, there's a committee formed under Link Us Initiative, a steering committee that's really looking at things outside of the BRT projects, but really linking into these and looking at connections that can be made. So really looking at the service that CODA offers today, and looking at that next gen plan that I mentioned, the 2050 plan, to see where can things be added in there. So right now, like I said, so yeah, the green represents the ones that were actually in implementation, but we're looking at other future corridors in the near future.
I think we're definitely great to expand to more on the west side.
Okay.
I've been reading these documents a lot. And something that just I can't get over. So when I read the corridor concepts plan, the West Broad corridor was one of those that's identified as possibly getting some of the highest population gains up to 2050. And the locally preferred alternative for PRT, I'm afraid that we might max out on what BRT ridership can offer if we do indeed get the type of population growth that was predicted for the Greater Hilltop. As is, the number 10 line is pretty close to meeting what would be considered stable for a BRT line. If it was BRT today, its current ridership would probably come, right? And what I'm just concerned about is if you guys do it right, you're going to increase demand. It's good, but I'm afraid that it won't last. I'm afraid it won't be enough. Is it possible for the way it's being built to be convertible to something more, able to higher capacity like rail?
Yeah, I know that was brought up in the first phase. I guess a couple of points. I think the first step in doing that is securing that dedicated right of way.
Yes.
So that's good that we're doing that. And I know as an industry, a lot of many of our peers are also looking at bus rapid transit networks. There's a lot of technology and advancement going towards things like platooning, having autonomous type of technologies, which may be far away from, but looking at those kind of concepts, and if a bus can come every couple of minutes, then you can still meet that need for the increased capacity. So I think it'd be a good problem to have. But again, that first step is really looking at securing that dedicated right of way. And when we're looking at the region as a whole, making sure that we're being able to build these corridors all over the region instead of focusing on one corridor. So.
Yeah, and speaking of the dedicated right away, I am curious, since that was a dedicated rail line at one point, and CODA did buy that rail line, does that right away still exist? West Broad used to have a dedicated rail line right through the middle. It did.
Okay.
Yeah. And they ran up until just right
It's
here.
like buried way under the pavement. It was on the gap.
Right, yeah. Do you know when they finally shut it down and sold the bullet?
Oh, we take it. It was the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, so it ran until 1960s. So I'm just curious if y'all know that you might actually already have one away.
I do not know that, but I'm sure the infrastructure would need to be improved significantly.
Oh, yeah. But
on principle, right?
right, yeah, exactly. You like the license, like the actual legal right of way, probably still exists for CODA in some respect.
I can look into it.
And are you able to show the slide with the 6 stops that are here? And so when I look at this slide, I mean, this is based on data from last year, let's say, even before. But as we look at where development's coming, are these going to be the places? Like I'm thinking of the Head Start as one place that's probably going to be where large numbers of people begin to go. And as I look at our commercial district, if there's going to be a large commercial district, it's not going to be A, and it probably wouldn't be Eureka. I mean, how dependent will we be on all of the work that goes to make those the stops? And then we find out 3 years later, that's not where the people are or need to be.
No, yeah, that's a great point. And Franklin brought up the same concern. And, you know, it's difficult because we're looking at ridership in 2019 before the pandemic. Because those, you know, we got a lot more data to work with. And then now, you know, things are, every week you see an article about new development and stuff. And, you know, we're still in the early process where we're getting to that 15 to 30% design where changes can be made, like shifting things around. So we have to start somewhere. And, you know, once we get that in there, hopefully it's the right location. But I'm not sure of like other case studies because I know we're not the first ones to do this. So what happens when there's a new project that doesn't coordinate very well with it, you know, so that's why we have an economic team now at CODA to kind of, and we work with the city very closely, making sure and the zoning code update right now too is helping to have a more transit influence than it ever has before. So really looking at those things and making sure around these station nodes, we can sync up the development patterns in a way that we connect them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so just in a matter of time, stop with any further questions. That's okay. Thank you so much for being here. I was hesitant. I talked to you guys about putting the presentation on the agenda because I really wanted there to be a robust conversation. So again, I'm going to encourage you to contact Victoria and Simon, the planning and economic committee chairs to just continue this conversation. Right? I think when we actually start to dig into the climate action plan, the updates around the LinkUs, there's really opportunity. Really like to have a broader discussion about this. So, yeah, I'd love for you to come back and spend some time. Great. Thank you.
I can send this to PDF.
Thank you. Our third presentation tonight is from Hilltop Advocate, representative of Impact Community Action, Gene Groves. I think I saw Gene.
Yeah.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine. So I have some information to hand out also to accompany the slides. Some information about it. So, for everybody that doesn't know me, my name is J.D. Grove. I actually served on the commission for a short term for the past few years pre-COVID. I have been tasked by Impact Community Action to facilitate engagement on the hilltop and preparing for the electric vehicle parking ordinance that is on the horizon. So I'd like to thank Chairman Fay for having me in, and also the leadership from the City of Columbus in really moving forward with not only engagement, but also the electric vehicle ordinance. So for the past few months, the City of Columbus, in conjunction with Clean Fuels Ohio and several stakeholders, have been holding what is being called equitable roundtable, with the intent of facilitating robust discussion with stakeholders to ensure that economically distressed areas are not an afterthought when it comes to building infrastructure for electric vehicles, charging stations, that is. So for the past couple of months, we have been attending roundtables, and this is the information that I've compiled since to present to you folks tonight. Hopefully, this information will be disseminated to the community, and we can help frame what will be the foundation for electric vehicle parking in the next 100 years. So it's actually very exciting. So from the beginning, I'd like to make sure that everyone understands that electric vehicles, they have an electric motor instead of a combustion. So to piggyback on a little bit of the information that Zach and Eric presented in terms of cleaning up the environment, the impact on the climate would be much benefited by the use of electric vehicles. So as a result, the electric vehicles or EVs use a large battery to pack the power for the electric motor. And obviously the benefit to the climate without having the exhaust is pretty big, especially with transportation, as you've heard, and especially with large transportation, for example, buses. I know right now we have, I believe, one electric vehicle that's active. But there's a goal by 2030 to have 10. So there are lofty goals. And also lower maintenance costs, lower fuel costs, and obviously benefit the environment. Go to the next slide. So to give you kind of an idea of why the push is being made currently, City Council will receive a proposal, a firm proposal, probably sometime by the summer in terms of a vote on a electric vehicle parking ordinance. So that's why it's time is of the essence for us to disseminate the information to the community and have these discussions to determine what's the best fit, not only for the city of Columbus, but for the Hilltop area in general. So automotive manufacturers project that EV will actually overtake combustion engines by 2035. In fact, Bloomberg is reporting that by 2037, 70% of the manufactured cars in the United States would be EV. And also very important is that the cost parity between EV and combustion, that will occur in the next 3 to 5 years, which means that right now, a lot of folks recognize electric vehicles as a luxury item, and that's something that is it's pretty widespread. And of course, they're very expensive. They tend to be. So there are projections that in the next 3 to 5 years that cost parity will happen, meaning that the penetration for affordable EVs will happen sooner than later. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is an example of the current EV adoption, meaning that the folks in Columbus that have registered vehicles, the Department of Motor Vehicles, these are the current rate is 6% in Columbus. So that may surprise you, actually surprised me when I first heard it. But the projections are that by 2030, in line with the climate action goals, that will rise significantly to 15%. And the current rate of adoption is significant, a couple of points higher than what the actual projected amount was. So we're ahead of where it was. Next slide. Okay, based upon the projected EV forecasting adoption rates in the city of Columbus, the climate action goals in 2030 will be pretty easily surpassed. Columbus will, to meet these goals, the city of Columbus will need 21,000 charging stations by 2030. Currently, the city of Columbus has 400. So there is a significant need to support the effort to have the infrastructure in place so that folks can charge their vehicles. And yet, as you can see, by 2050, we're talking about 50,000. So we'll need 50,000 charging stations by 2050. So it's It's amazing the prospect of investment and also the infrastructure that's going to take place, because like I said before, I'm coming to you from the future, because this is something that will be around for a long time. In order to meet these goals in support of the EV equity distribution, readiness thresholds have been discussed and will be implemented. In the paperwork that I've passed around, there are some descriptions of the EV readiness thresholds that I'd like the folks, if you get time, take a look at it and have a better understanding. Currently, with the Equitable Roundtable that the City of Columbus is undertaking, one of the biggest points of discussion is how to implement the readiness thresholds. So it's something not just within our Hilltop, but in many of the economically distressed areas in the city. So the discussion through the community advocacy engagement will directly impact the ordinance. So as I said before, time of the essence. So we're looking to gather as much feedback as we can to present to stakeholders and really try to frame the ordinance tailored to the needs of the Hilltop. So when we talk about EV readiness, this is basically what we're looking at. So to give you a brief description, there are 3 standards of readiness, and the first being EV capable. So electrically, this means that there is been allocated space in an existing electrical panel and conduit run to where the EV charging station will be. The next level is categorized as EV ready. So it'd be a step farther where they would actually be wired the conduit and either a terminal box or a plug, an outlet that can be plugged into. And then finally, the last is the electric vehicle supply equipment being installed and ready to go. So these are the thresholds for readiness that will be established for each building category. And as I said before, these thresholds are a main talking. Because I have to tell you that the first inclination when you talk about infrastructure in economically distressed areas is, well, do they really need it? So that's part of the discussion. So I'd like you to wrap your mind around that. Go ahead and do that next. So beginning January 1st of next year, requirements will go into effect for all building permits from 1 to 3 family dwelling, all site plans, all building types submitted to building and zoning. And also that includes commercial districts, C1, C2, C3, and C4, including standalone surface lots and parking structures. All new construction, there will be a percentage across the city that will be required to meet these EV readiness thresholds. So it's very important. And also, I've also noted that the city is also exploring options to offset the EV charging of sites on affordable housing, so as not to disaffect investment in affordable housing. Market rate, multifamily and offices included, those will be included in the requirements. So an investment into a new apartment building, they will fall under the requirement of a certain percentage of those charging stations being installed. Okay, so the biggest question is how can we ensure that equitably that the Hilltop does not lag behind in technology? So for many of you who do live on the Hilltop and have lived on the Hilltop for years and years, we tend to lag behind in infrastructure. And I see it as an opportunity in terms of technology to equalize some of that lagging behind. So for the next couple of months, the my intent to facilitate the engagement across the hilltop, meeting with several stakeholders. So if anyone would have questions for me in regard to some of the information that's been presented tonight, feel free to get a hold of me if you have any suggestions or concerns about some of the readiness thresholds and the other information that are presented. That's all I have. I'll share the questions.
One quick dumb question. Let's say I have an electric vehicle. Do I go home at night, park it in my driveway, plug it in? Or am I at work somewhere, and when I'm at work, I plug it in? How does it work?
Okay, so consumers that are purchasing electric vehicles have the ability, right off the bat, when you take the car off the lot, to install a charging station at your home. So there are different levels of electricity and different levels of charging stations. For our purposes here, we are dealing with level 2. The ordinance will cover level 2 charging stations, which essentially is comparable to your dryer, but can be as strong as 80 to 100 amps. So the more amperage that you have, the faster the charge. So you can also go the other way and have less amperage, and it will take longer to charge. So with the ordinance in particular, there will be public charging stations that may or may not cost. So currently, those discussions are being had with the Equitable Roundtable. I can tell you right now that there are charging stations across the city that are not charging. There are 3 charging stations. But on the other side of the coin, there are a debit card or some type of payment in order to charge your vehicle. So for anyone that doesn't know, currently on the hilltop, does anyone know how many charging stations we currently have?
No, we have like 3 or 4, but they're around.
Okay, currently we have 1 charging station on the hilltop. It is on Georgesville Road. It is at the Pathways Credit Union, and that's the only one that we have. So there's 400 across the city. There's probably upwards of 1,000 if you count private. And the one at Georgesville, it may be.
I think it is.
It may be, but it's a slope. You're going to have to sit there for a while.
What's the benefit to Hilltop to have that one?
If you need it.
Well, most private people that are purchasing EVs have the ability to charge in their home overnight. So the benefit to having EV infrastructure is that I have to tell you, the Hilltop's open for business. So the more that we are open for business, the more that we're drawing people in from other parts of the city and across the region. And if we're able to support this infrastructure in a way that we can have a person 4 to 6 hours, they're going to spend money here. And that's pretty important. That's pretty important.
One real quick thing.
Yeah.
On the ESV, on the full stations,
Mm-hmm.
I think if we're gonna put an ordinance, it's also really important to have a maintenance section on it. I drive an EV and half the stations I see in Houston, they just don't work. So there's like, they put them in and then they just stop working, so it's important to make sure that they work.
So there will be, there is, as a part of this discussion, the maintenance for these charging stations is being talked about. Obviously, it's not anything set in stone, but it's a vital concern. I'm glad that you brought it up, and it'll be something that we continue to talk about and kind of push to make sure that the maintenance is undertaken. So. Anybody else? Yeah, John.
Are all, I guess like charging electric cars, do they all have like the same like plug-in or?
So
No. On one side, I have no
the short answer is no, but there is a universal adapter that is in use. It's J1772 or something to that effect. So there is a universal adapter that is in play. So many of these public charging stations just have to put the adapter on, plug it. So that's how that. Are we done with the commissioners?
Yes.
Sure.
Hi, sorry, I have two suggestions. I'm not sure if it's already in the market. I didn't see it there.
Okay.
But I was wondering if the EV charging stations would be solar or could be solar. And then the second one was, is there gonna be like a rescue service? Because I've learned that when the electric vehicle runs out of battery, if you're driving it, you're standing on the side of the road, you can't just push it or tow it the way that you would with a gasoline vehicle.
Okay.
And so,
Very good questions.
yeah.
Very good questions. So, the first, I'll answer the second one first. So, currently, as a part of the EV parking ordinance, that is not something that's being discussed. I mean, if you have, for example, if you break down on the side of the road in a combustion vehicle, it's your responsibility to call tow, right? So, in terms of EV, it would be something, I mean, if you run out of gas, I think that that's viable. There could be a private market for that. There could be a private market for that, whether or not it's a public interest. I don't think that has been discussed thoroughly, but there could be a space there that could be fulfilled for sure. And the first one, did you read that? There are solar powered EV charging stations. There are, as a part of this ordinance, that would deal with supply equipment being installed, and I would say that has not been a part of the discussion. See, one of the biggest impediments to getting these charging stations installed is cost, which is why they are talking about EV readiness thresholds, why we're talking about just putting pipe in the ground and then second level putting wire in it. And that's why it's being discussed in that fashion, because of the cost. So the city of Columbus is considering the burden on private investment and also the burden on public investment and trying to weigh the interests of each to find an equitable solution. So the point being is that without the use of solar, it would be a more expensive installation. So I would say that as of now, that is not something that is being discussed, but I think it's viable. It's definitely something that should be in the future.
So we'll have to just have to, so ODOT does have, they do support State Farm as like their highway patrol officers. They will come and provide fuel, chase flat tire, and things of that nature. And to kind of follow up with like the providing services for EV charging, the UK does offer, like they have the same setup. It's like vans that drive around with jump packs and the ability to provide people with like an additional 30-mile like range to a charging station. So like it's a viable thing, and it's definitely stuff that people do in other countries. So I would maybe contact like ODOT and see how like you guys can partner with them to like get State Farm the EV portion of it, because I do see that the impact it's going to have on Columbus system.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's not a viable interest. As it relates to the parking ordinance, it's not being discussed as a part of the round. That's what I'm saying.
I have a question.
Sir.
The electricity east of Wilson Road between South and Broad and even north of Broad. Even three phase, this is a tremendous cost. We're severely lacking in electricity on the road. So that's tremendous. Provide that. That's a lot of electricity.
Well, you're
100 cars. That's the city can't supply the electricity to my block.
So we're talking about the capacity in your service panel at your home.
If we had 10 of those cars in my block, those cannot supply electricity right now.
So we're talking.
They're overwhelmed, they're wrong.
Okay, so we're talking about individual capacity in your panel. So if you have a panel that has room for an additional 2-pole 40 amp breaker, you can charge overnight.
That's rare on this, so, yeah.
It depends. I mean, it depends. It depends. For the most part,
I'll say that like industries here on the west side, I have one of them, and I can't get the state, that's city funds is a night not provided enough prices. So we start bringing parts in here and take other names.
well, that's a max.
There's a pole, so.
That's a max for level 2. And that's,
Sitting on the pay for the poles and all.
so we're talking about, the parking ordinance is covering. So we're talking about, there's two different. So the private homes, folks, privately dealing with expanding capacity of their service panels. And then we're also talking about on the public side, the charging stations using the existing grid.
So Jamie, if I can though, and this is the reason why these conversations I think are so important, because what the issue that I think you're getting at is part of a larger infrastructure concern. And that's something that Aaron can take back, because you made a really good point. Not only is it expensive to upgrade your AMP service, but it also requires a lot of technical knowledge, requires permits being pulled. So as part of the city looking at ways that we can loosen some of those red tape restrictions to at least give residents the option to access these opportunities, that's the kind of feedback I think that we need to be hearing as we're having these conversations. Because what JD is talking about is a little bit separate, related to, but I know Aaron's going to know that now, please, because it's a really good,
I agree.
It's a good point.
The wires to the sky will not support 10 cars in my home. It's not my house, the wires in the sky. If I burn them.
I think honestly there will be more challenges with some of the public's infrastructure supporting that type of stuff. On the private side in people's homes, most folks in the area have they have 100 amp service, and demand factor on that takes you 80%. So to add a 40 amp breaker, 10 houses, when nothing else is in use, there's a demand factor there privately that doesn't impact. Most people charge their vehicles. So I'll say this to you in closing. It's a really good point what you're saying, but most folks will be charging their vehicles when they're asleep. So if they were to add a 40 amp breaker in their panel and not use their dryer, then they have 40 amps available, right? So that's how that would work.
Yeah, so Jamie, you've also agreed to come to committee meetings and continue this discussion.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
You guys are gonna be stopped.
In fact, I think coming to development and community relations, and absolutely, I just need the dates and I'll mark it down and come out. And I tried to give as much information in the pamphlets as I could. Like I said, it was probably 75 or 80 pages. I got the most information that I could. I thought it was perfect. So if you guys peruse through that, come up with something and for discussion, and absolutely, more than happy.
We'll have those dates. If you stick around to the end of the meeting, have those dates. We can make sure you have.
Sure.
Your presentation. Thank you so much. Great. So I think we can move pretty quickly through the next couple of items. So I did put on the agenda that we needed to take a look at the budget that was proposed by the Finance Committee. So just who was at the Finance Committee meeting? Patrick, Leah, Jenny, James. Most of us were here. Most of us had this discussion, and as a committee has approved what you're going to see here. So we have $2,500 to begin in May, goes through the end of April of 2023. And this would be the breakdown of how we would submit this total column over here.
So $106 would be designated to space cost and rentals, 50 to consumable supplies, and a big old bucket of money under miscellaneous expenses. So what does that mean? If we unhide this, this is how it all breaks down. As you can see, $671 in that category. We've divided this by committees. Each committee had a request of an amount or a item, a supply, some project, some initiative that they put forward. And this is how it's designated. So for example, community relations, $75 for an award, $150 for a Zoom license, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't given everybody this in writing. I just got this from Sean and I elected to do that. And wasn't able to pass it out, but wanted to see if we could go ahead and put up a motion, since most people were at that finance committee meeting, to say that I would like to put up a motion to approve this budget for a $2,500 program supplies for this next program year.
So moved.
So moved. All right, take a voice vote. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next agenda item. Under new business, I wanted to just share really quickly that at the Hilltop Library, they have expanded their hours. They're open until 9 o'clock. And there's a gentleman there named Mike Alcock, who's the information services specialist. Good guy. Got to meet him a couple Saturdays ago. And he gave me a pretty thorough update. He has made sure to go through for the rest of the year and make sure every committee meeting had a standing meeting. There was some glitches. There was a wall in the library that broke, and so they had to move some meetings around, and a couple of our meetings had fallen off the calendar. So he went through, he made sure that they're all on the calendar for the next year if you had a committee meeting there. He is willing to continue to make those reservations, but I'm going to give you a telephone number to call in directly. It's 614-479-3810. And so all committee chairs, this is your direct phone line to the library to talk about your committee meeting. If you, oh my gosh, I need to cancel it, you can call Mike directly or one of his representatives will answer the phone, or if you need to make any scheduling changes. One more thing about this, you still have the opportunity, if you want to schedule meetings on your own using your own library card, you can do that. And then that gives you the opportunity to log in online, see that the meeting's scheduled, confirm and all of that. So, but they have worked on the IT issues there that a lot of groups were experiencing. They think they've made some real improvements. We were there on that Saturday, it would be right online. Let's see. And he's confirmed some of the Meet the GHAC room reservations that they're currently, that Jenny talked about earlier. So any questions about that? Yeah, do you want to go ahead and make that announcement?
Yeah, and you mentioned last time that only certain meetings need to be posted to the city bulletin now, or is it maybe just the zoning and the whole meeting?
Yeah, so Melissa, you can help me with this too. So what Victoria's saying is that right. We had been told, like, if you wanted to schedule a committee meeting in 2 days from now, that you were going to have to make sure that we gave the city, Melissa, enough notice so that it can be published in the city bulletin. So the best practice would be to continue to get everybody as much notice as possible, but that a change to a committee meeting does not have to be given to Melissa necessarily to go in the city bulletin, right? But you have the schedule of our full commission meetings for the rest of the year, and that's already been given to the right person in the city. Those will be in the future bulletins. You only need to know if there's a change or there's nothing you need to know at this point.
No, yeah, there's nothing I need to know at this point. And I'm going to caveat that by saying that this move to using the website is a change that occurred during the pandemic. And we are not asking about whether or not it's going to revert back. No, this told us that it has to revert back. My expectation is I hope this will be a change that is for the good of everyone, that will stay around for a while. Under the previous system, I did have to have at least 2 weeks notice if there was going to be a change, because the city bulletin only runs on Saturdays, and I have to have everything in. So per the normal rules, there needs to be 7 days notice of any change. But the bulletin, because of when it needs to be submitted prior to that Saturday, it becomes very challenging. So keep that in mind if you're making any changes to meetings. You just need to be able to make that update on your website at least 7 days in advance. Once we are out of the current COVID, exemption period through June 31st. Right now, changes to meetings under that legislation only require 24-hour notice.
So I'm going to ask her, or Jenny is one of the co-chairs of the committee that is working on processes and kind of new orientation for new members. Is that something you could kind of put down as just how we handle meeting changes and posting and all of that stuff? Just to make sure, would you be willing to review that just to make sure that we're
100%.
doing
And
that correctly?
as of right now, too, if you're looking at those processes, let's just keep them at that 7-day mark. And I really think that's best practice in general. The reason those rules exist are to make sure that nobody's doing any tricky business trying to have meetings that are inaccessible. And I know that this commission is very, very much committed to the transparency and openness. So it's just good.
We've got a great support and Josh, who always is willing to pick up an email and make a change. He can't go on vacation, so. Yeah. It's which brings me to the next order of business. Because the Hilltop Library now has expanded their hours until 9 p.m. I'm going to put a motion out because there's been some discussion about. I'm going to go ahead and bring forward a motion to say that we would move our full commission meetings back to the Hilltop Library beginning next month. You second that. So let's have a discussion about that. Is there anybody that's opposed to that? Anybody that has anything to say one way or the other?
I just sent out the email saying that it'll be next month with the library here. I can correct that.
Oh, I apologize. So John's just said he just sent it out.
I tried to do it ahead of time and I screwed it up. So.
He is the best.
In favor of sticking around here, I have to say that we have a lot of flexibility with the church. They have a great facility. Every time that we needed anything extra or particular audio visual assistance, I mean, if we need a bigger room, they don't hesitate to help out and to give us those options, and they don't charge us. So they've been incredibly generous with us. We're spoiled rotten in this space. They even pass out free food to us sometimes at the end. So Steve Washam has been our contact for the church this whole time. He accommodated us for the trash summit. I just want to, first of all, before we make any votes, I want to make sure that we acknowledge Steve and all. So that's my 2 cents. I feel bad. I know this is good. This is useful for the church to have this kind of, to have the community involved in here. But we've been really grateful for your flexibility with us. We even have free Wi-Fi. For crying out loud, that's a big deal. So I'm really grateful for that.
I know we struggle with ending on time. It is 9:05 now. I like the idea of having a forced ending personally, to just get us going. To be respectful of community time, be respectful of our host's time. That would be my vote in favor of the library.
I'd like to say that if we do decide to move back to the library, that we consider starting our meetings not to extend them, to start them at 6:30. What ends up happening is at 8:30 p.m. the announcement starts happening, you get your book bags, make sure your ride's called, all that. You can't hear the conversations that are happening. And we literally have to be packed up, which we should be over and we should be done, but it just doesn't give us the opportunity to even take 3 minutes and pull all the equipment together and get out the door. Parking is somewhat of a struggle over there if we had a larger meeting. Just my final thought about this vote or this decision is, if we do go back to the library, if that's the vote, that we maintain a strong partnership with this church and what they've been able to do, like with the trash summit and just the ability to, offer feeding assistance, all kinds of things that we've been able to kind of become aware of as a result of this relationship. So.
Church is great. I just want to go home, which is the library.
Yeah, library's about as central to that.
Okay, so any other comments or questions? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make that in the motion to, we will, starting next month for our full commission meetings, we will go to, going back to meeting with the Hilltop Library, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Second, it's the voice vote. Yeah.
Did you say 7 to 9 or 6:30?
Sorry, let's just do voice vote. I don't think we need to go around. We would take the meeting and move it. We want to do it one step at a time. 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. starting next month at the Hilltop Library. All those in favor of moving to the Hilltop Library next month and then ongoing basis, say aye. Aye. All those that would like to stay here at the River Baptist Church. There's one vote, so the decision is we'll move back to Hilltop Library. I'm going to make a quick motion. Also to talk about that we move our meetings to beginning at 6:30. So, let's any discussion about that.
We try to formally end at 8:45 so we can break down some sort of link to the library and we have to be out by 9.
Just what I'm proposing is that the meeting will be 2 hours. 6:30.
Oh, yes.
So you're seconding that motion. Any discussion about that?
I would counter 6:45 to 8:45, but you know what? That's a little bit too confusing. Yeah, it's 45 quarter hours. No, 6:30 is fine.
Okay. Good thought. You'll be married.
Yeah, no, it's quarter hours. It's a little bit better for my schedule.
All right, so ready, let me get into this up for a vote. Everybody in favor of making the meeting 6:30 to 8:30? Anybody that's opposed to that, I'd like to keep the meeting at 7 p.m. Anybody that's staying? Okay, so then starting next month, Mr. Maddox, Josh, it'll be 6:30 to 8:30 at the Hilltop Library.
Zoning. Well, zoning on me here.
Zoning was never here.
Oh, zoning not here. Zoning's I'm very much out of the where is zoning?
Zoning's written at the library.
Okay, wonderful.
One of the things that we've been asked to get through to new business was a letter that was brought forward by the Planning and Economic Development Committee around the Hilltop Rise Economic Community Development Corporation that is being started. It's actually it's happening as we speak. So I don't really feel like we have an adequate amount of time to talk about this at this point. I'm going to ask that. James, would you be willing to come and do a presentation or be available?
I'd be happy to come back in May, but is there any way you can vote on it? Because I'm submitting the grant to the city before your next meeting. I mean, is there enough information on here and in the
Yes,
letter?
sir. I haven't adjourned the meeting yet, and I don't think this needs to take a long discussion unless we have a long discussion, right? So Hilltop Rise, can you just give us like a 2-minute synopsis? We just need to show what you developed.
Okay, I will give you the Reader's Digest version.
Yep.
4-year process, started Economic Development Corporation on the Hilltop, and now is the time to do it. All the presentations you heard tonight with the Hilltop, all the stars have aligned, and we're ready to launch this because we are, when you think about people, place, and home, we've got folks in people column and the whole, we had no one in place. And so what we're doing is starting an economic CDC. We have our EDI already, EDI number. We are ready to launch in May. I didn't really want to delay this. We are asking the city for seed funding. We will be hiring a full-time economic development executive director. And on our board, we have 2 property owners that are in key nodes, the key development nodes. We have a business owner who is connected to a group of business owners. We have both a current and a former GHAC commissioner. We have somebody from Columbus Landmarks Foundation. We have somebody from the Department of Neighborhoods. Most important, not most importantly, but very importantly, we have somebody from CODA who is part of their development department. So all of that information that we heard about tonight with DRT is to be incorporated into this. And we have Cleve Ricksecker, who has agreed to be on our board. And if for any of you who have seen his presentation that he made to the Planet Economic Development Committee, it's huge. So we will be recruiting and hiring a full-time director. More news to come on that. But right now, this letter is to support our application for city funding for seed funding. And then we will be going out and team helping and putting a donate button on our website and all of that. But for now, this is just to get us started.
You know the kind of money that could potentially be available, or you sure that?
I can't hear
you. Do you know the kind of money that may be available through the application? Are you able to share that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, the funding request, we are requesting 75,000, which is what Franklin got 12 years ago. With inflation, I probably should have asked for more, and we're a lot bigger than Franklin, but it's okay. So we are asking, and actually, I've already met with Nick Bankston, met with the Department of Development, and they're all in support. Department of Neighborhoods is very supportive of it. This is seed money. This is not going to be funded by the city going forward. This is just to help us get started.
Okay. So as you can see here, this handout for anybody that wants this kind of one-page flyer infographic about Hilltop Rise. The idea is to form an independent private CDC focused on the Hilltop. The letter of support that is penned here would come from the commission. I, as the chair, could sign this, that we would express support for this Hilltop Rise Economic Community Development Corporation to receive city funding if that is approved. And the rest of the letter, does everybody have a copy of it? Has everybody had a chance to read it? That we would be in support of bringing this to the Hilltop. Any questions? We'll put this to vote.
No, I just want to make sure that a copy of interest disclosure that Victoria is on the board.
I did hear Betty's longer presentation at this most recent Planning and Economic Development Committee. It is impressive, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. If you have not heard the presentation, and make an effort to hear the presentation.
And to that, Planning and Economic Development did discuss this. Victoria abstained from voting on the letter. I mean, we recommended it, and we recommended being strongly on a lot of work that is done. And this is something that clearly be a good facilitator for maintaining, having affordable commercial space on our economic corridors, which is really important moving forward as businesses as we grow.
Did you have I was thinking JD. That's okay.
Actually, yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm very happy to hear about this. Betty and I have talked about this for probably 5 years.
Sure.
And so one of the things on the Hilltop that in other economically distressed areas is we don't have a unified group to help develop business. For a long time on the Hilltop, the Hilltop Business Association kind of filled that role in years, the past 20 to 30 years, the membership has declined a little bit, and that void has been left. And so for the past 5 or 6 years, that's been a point of discussion to support an effort to have a unified development team to draw business and economic development experience. I'm very happy.
Thank you for your comment.
We need to move to approve the letter.
We do need to approve it. I just want to make sure we have an opportunity to have a quick discussion if we needed to have one or wanted to have one. So,
I move to approve the letter.
okay.
A second.
For a second, Malik seconded that for the record. So, I think we need to take go around and take a individual vote or roll vote. Absolutely.
Fagan,
I would approve that. Yes.
also a yes. Barnacle.
Yes.
Bruno,
Yes.
Kevlar,
Yes.
Klein,
Stay.
Paxton,
Yes.
Dallas,
Yes.
Maddox,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to skip over announcements and officially adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming.
I'm just gonna make an announcement, Tiffany Phillips, of the, Highland West Civic Association wanted me to announce that they're having their spring cleanup this Saturday, 9 AM. They'll start at the Highland West Gardens, and they're gonna make their way to the pig and back.
Highland West crash cleanup this Saturday, 9 AM. Meet at Glenwood. Right? Did I get it right? If I got it right, I'll be there.
Highland West Gardens.
Oh, the Highland West Garden. That's Glenwood, I call